It's unfortunately very easy for people to find your information online, and that includes your phone number, whether it's already on the internet public to everybody or available for purchase on websites like White Pages. If you're getting text from an unfamiliar number, it's usually safe to assume it's a scam or someone you might not want to be talking to. A 20-something-year-old girl from Los Angeles, who I'll refer to as Tina, was using an online dating app called OkCupid. She had matched with a guy named Richard, age 26, tall, black hair, average build. Tina says he looked pretty attractive in his pictures, which he had 4 of on his profile, which were all of him posing in different places. One with his dog, one in his car, one selfie, and one in front of a scenic waterfall. He lived only a couple miles away from Tina, and the two messaged back and forth for a while on the app, mingling over how long they've lived in the city for and where they've been to, etc. Eventually they exchanged numbers and started texting, with Richard quickly suggesting the two go on a date. Some of the text read as follows: "What are you up to tonight?" "Taking care of my dog and then relaxing. I'm exhausted." "Okay, I was gonna ask if you wanted to go on a date or something." "Not tonight. What about tomorrow though?" "Yeah, that works for me. We can go to the Stalking Horse. I think that's like right in the middle of both of us." "Yeah, that works." So the two agreed to a date the following night at a brewery that's not far from either of them. The conversation continues to go completely normal as the two are on their way to the bar. While Tina is on her way in an Uber, it appears that Richard may possibly be walking to the bar. He gets there before her and holds a spot at the bar for them. The text communication stops for a while once Tina lets him know that she's arrived, and so she goes inside to meet him and their date begins. They were in there for about an hour before Tina had to cut the date short due to being completely uncomfortable. She says from the first minute, she knew something about his vibe was off, that he just had a weird aura. She didn't like the way he looked at her, or his mannerisms, or his conversational skills. She found that he'd laugh at uncomfortable things and ask inappropriate questions, and even make weird faces, mostly with his eyes. Around the hour mark, she said she had to head home. Richard insisted he'd walk her home instead of having her Uber. Tina, at the time, says she was way too nice to people and often couldn't say no to things, so she reluctantly agreed to let him walk her home. It was a 20-minute walk, and the whole time she still felt the same unusual energy he'd given off inside the bar. She tried to be short with her answers to him. By the time they got to her apartment, he initiated a hug goodbye at the front of her driveway and she went inside. Not long after, she received this text: "Did I do something wrong? I got the vibe you were acting weird the way back. I was just trying to be nice." "Hey, no, you didn't do anything wrong. I just truthfully feel like we didn't really connect on a deeper level, and that's completely fine. But at this moment in my life, I'm just looking for that special connection with someone. I'm sorry, but I wish you the best. You were very nice." What? It was one date. Obviously you won't feel a deeper connection immediately. That's what getting to know someone is. It takes multiple dates. "I'm sorry, I just don't think I'm interested." By this point, Richard gets very angry and aggressive, saying things like he wasted $100 on her and telling her to get back on her stupid dating apps. But then after Tina stops answering, Richard sends a very clear threat that he knows where she lives now. Tina sends one final response and then blocks Richard's number. She hoped that would be the end of it, but about 15 minutes after blocking his number, there was a manic pounding at the front door, and the angry screams of Richard were coming from the other side. Tina didn't give any kind of response. She hid in her bedroom until the bangs stopped. When she went to look through the peephole, she saw Richard standing by the side of her door, hiding from view. She called the police on him, and when they showed up, she went outside. Richard was still there, so she showed the officers the text and explained to them that Richard was pounding on her door and she felt threatened. The officers gave him a warning and asked him to leave the premises. Still, knowing Richard now knew where she lived, she wasn't comfortable. In fact, she didn't want to leave her apartment the next night, and when she looked out the peephole again, she saw Richard sitting on the stairs leading up to her apartment, waiting. She once again called the police, and for a second time, the police came and gave Richard another warning, asking him to once again leave the premises. Tina begged them to arrest him and charge him, but they seemed unwilling to do so, saying he wasn't an imminent threat, shockingly. Tina called the guy friend the following few days to come escort her out of her apartment anytime she'd leave to be safe, and Richard the following few days to come escort her out of her apartment anytime she'd leave to be safe, and Richard was no longer there. But a week later, she received a text from a random number saying, "Are you home?" She didn't answer and blocked the number. Since the police department was unwilling to do anything, Tina ended up moving apartments because of this harassment. This next one was sent to me by a girl named Marissa who had been contacted by a crazy ex who she hadn't spoken to in years. She dated her ex Dylan on and off for 3 years, and in her words, she didn't have a backbone when she would see him. And even though their relationship was kind of abusive, she'd find herself constantly going back to him. After their final breakup, Marissa asked Dylan to stop contacting her and to pretend she didn't exist. This infuriated him even more, to the point where he knocked on her front door while her parents were home. Her father had to open the door to Dylan, practically trying to fight him when he wouldn't let him in. Things were finally broken off, seemingly for good, when the police got involved. Due to Dylan's history with violence, Marissa's parents convinced her to get a restraining order against him. This, however, didn't prove to be an end-all. For a while, there had been no contact from Dylan. Marissa had blocked any form of contact from him, but there are of course other ways around that, what with fake numbers and fake social media accounts. In June, 2 months after the order of protection had been processed, Marissa got a request on her Instagram from a random account named Kyle. It looked like a regular person, so she allowed it to follow her, but she didn't follow it back. Sometime in June, Marissa had posted a story on her Instagram on a date with a guy she had been talking to, in which she tagged the guy she was on the date with. Shortly after, the guy received death threats in all capitals from the Kyle account, and Marissa received a DM as well, saying he's disgustingly ugly. It was pretty clear this was a fake account now, probably run by Dylan attempting to keep tabs on what's going on in Marissa's life. After using Instagram's feature to block the account and any new ones the person makes, she hoped that would be the end of it. After a few weeks of no attempted contact from Dylan, Marissa one night was sitting in her kitchen on her laptop doing homework, when she got a text message from a random number. It was a picture of her sitting there at the counter on her laptop, taken from outside the kitchen window. She was home alone at this time, so it couldn't have been any of her siblings trying to scare her. She looked out the window to see no one, but the picture was clearly taken moments ago, so someone was out there. She closed the blind to the window and called her dad. While on the phone with him, she saw Dylan outside in the backyard at the door, attempting to slide it open. Marissa's father called 911 for his daughter as he rushed home. Dylan was calling into the house at Marissa, demanding she open the door, getting angrier as time went on, and she yelled at him to leave her alone. Dylan got so angry that he punched the glass and broke a hole in it, causing him to start screaming in pain and anger as Marissa saw blood gushing from his hand. Dylan was still in the backyard as police arrived to the house. Marissa grabbed the order of protection document to show them as Dylan was already in handcuffs. Dylan was charged and sentenced to 3 years in prison for violation of the order of protection and vandalism. This allows Marissa and her family some time to breathe and feel safe, but ideally when he's released, they should probably not be living in that same house anymore for their own safety. This last one goes to show why it's probably best not to entertain random numbers texting you for too long. This one comes from a young girl who I'll refer to as Nicole. She was 14 when this happened, living with her parents in a New York City suburb. Next door is another family of 4 with 2 sons. The sons are both older than Nicole and her sister. The younger son, who was 18, named Gene, had tried to talk to Nicole on several occasions despite their age difference. He was a senior in their high school when she was a freshman, which is how they knew each other at all. Whenever Nicole would be outside, Gene would conveniently come out of his house at the same time and always try to talk to her. He would often try to walk to school with her too. Nicole says Gene is slightly unusual, but she can't tell if he's on the spectrum or not. Still, in the past she's tried to be nice to him, and has agreed to walk to school with him before, mostly because it's only a 10-minute walk. Gene has attempted to get Nicole's number multiple times, and she always politely rejected him, saying she's not looking for anything with anyone at the moment. According to her, it was mildly creepy but somewhat innocent behavior, until he started becoming more pushy. When Gene started to make Nicole uncomfortable by seemingly waiting outside for her and invading her personal space, she started asking her mom to drive her to school in the morning to avoid Gene following her or waiting for her. This got him to stop waiting around for her, but things worsened in a different way. One night, Nicole had a boy from school over in her room. Her bedroom is upstairs. The two were sitting on her bed, and Nicole got a text from an unfamiliar number. The text was very unsettling and alarming, because it said, "I thought you said you're not looking for anyone at the moment." Nicole replied, "Is this Gene?" And he replied, "Maybe." Nicole asked him how he got her number, and he said, "You gave it to me, remember?" But she knew for a fact she didn't give it to him. and she told him that. He ignored her confrontation and said, "Who is that in your bed?" This brought the interaction to a much more invasive level, because now it meant that Gene hadn't just seen the two of them enter through the front of the house, but rather he'd been watching them through the window. Nicole looked out her window, which looked to the neighboring house, at a window to a dark room. The light in this room was never on, and it was thought to be a big closet or spare room. But since the light was out, she couldn't see if Gene was standing at that window or not. She lowered the blind and showed her parents the texts. Nicole's parents went next door and had a conversation with Gene's parents, and learned that Gene allegedly has schizoid personality disorder, but whether or not that diagnosis was accurate wouldn't justify creepy, stalkerish behavior like that. Gene never admitted how he was able to get Nicole's number, but there could be multiple explanations, like getting it through a mutual acquaintance or buying it through a public records website like White Pages. Whether Gene's parents' diagnosis of their son was accurate or not, Nicole knew something was not completely normal about him, and she became afraid to leave her house because of him. Nicole's mom continued to drive her to school after this, and for the sake of both of their daughters' happiness, the family moved to another house in the neighborhood not long after this. I didn't go away to college, so meeting girls and overall socializing wasn't as spoon-fed to me as the kids who went away to party schools and prestigious universities. In my freshman year, I grew bored fairly quickly as my friend group had shrunken tremendously. Meeting people at what was basically a commuter college was next to impossible unless you joined clubs or sports. So my main source of meeting girls, at least, was Tinder and Bumble or Instagram. One day I got a follow request from some very attractive girl named Miranda. I could tell she was attractive just based off her profile picture. I requested to follow her back, and when she instantly accepted my request, I started to look through her pictures a bit to make sure it wasn't a catfish. Her profile seemed real. She had around 4,500 followers. She only followed a few hundred people, and all her pictures had a lot of likes and comments. And then she DM'd me, and my face lit up. She DM'd me saying she found me on Tinder and thought I was cute, which, yes, I had my Instagram username in my Tinder bio at the time. She also had photos posted dated back to beyond a year prior, so everything checked out on my catfish radar. We chatted in the DMs for a few days. When she posted a new picture, I liked it and commented on it as she asked me to. I just put down a couple fire emojis. She liked it, of course. I checked some of the other comments, and they were also from guys gassing her up, throwing her compliments left and right. Clearly, I wasn't the only guy talking to her, or at least trying to. Well, one night we struck up a conversation once again, still in the DMs. I told her I had the house to myself that night and figured I'd be risky and invite her over. She seemed pretty open to it. I just tried my best to keep it as lighthearted as possible. I gave her my address just to ask her how long of a drive it would be. She said 10 minutes. I then confirmed if she was coming or not, and she replied, "Yeah, I'll come." Then she asked me how old I was, and I said 18. She replied that she was 19, but this conflicted with something that I remember she replied to one of the many other men commenting on one of her posts. His comment was something like, "Damn girl, how old are you?" And she replied 25. The guy she was responding to was some bald guy who looked to be in his 50s. This got me suspicious. I started analyzing the people who were commenting on her posts a little more, and I realized they were all guys. There were no female friends of hers commenting supportive stuff that you'd see on basically any other girl's Instagram. And most of the comments seemed to be just old, creepy dudes telling her how sexy she was. I then looked for any pictures of her with other girls, maybe some friends tagged in a picture. But no, any pictures of her with other girls in it, the girls were not tagged in, and there were no comments from any of the girls in the pictures. This was starting to scream catfish, so I blocked the account. Not long after, talking within 10 minutes, I started getting spammed with DMs from 3 random accounts. They all had profile pictures, but all of them had less than 50 followers. They all appeared to be fake, and they were DMing me threats about how I shouldn't have done that. I gave in and replied to one of them, and instantly, it replied back, "Unblock Miranda." I blocked that account as well, and went to unsend all my recent DMs to that Miranda account, specifically the one with my address in it. I counted myself lucky I didn't give the account my phone number or any other info. I also set my Instagram profile to private. After that ordeal, I ended up trying to get anyone else to come over and take advantage of having the house to myself, but eventually I gave up and went to bed. I have trouble sleeping 90% of the time, and this night was no exception. So after I'd say at least an hour and a half of trying to fall asleep, I heard noises from outside in the living room. Now this was in February, so it was freezing out and the heat was on full blast, so there were always ticking and clicking sounds from all the baseboard heaters. But a couple noises sounded a little different, like louder. I didn't go check though, and while each click and clack from around the house was making me look over into my dark room making sure no one was there, I eventually somehow fell asleep. But not for long. I woke up and it was still dark in the room. I knew something woke me up, like how sometimes you hear a sound in your sleep and it's a delayed reaction before you wake up a few seconds later. Well, that's what happened here. I sat up in my bed, the clicking of the heater still filling the room. I looked in the far corner of my room, and at first I didn't believe what I was seeing. I looked closer and could see it better. There was a person in the corner of the room, and I swear I could see their grinning face. I was so scared in that moment, I got up from my bed, unable to even scream. I ran all the way outside into the snow in my bare feet, and I rang the neighbor's bell a million times. While in there, I basically cried to them that someone was in the house, and I used their phone to call 911. When police searched the entire house, they didn't find anyone. The back door and side door were both locked, and so were most of the windows. The only possibility of someone getting in would have been through one of the backyard windows, which was left unlocked. The police officers comforted me in letting me know that it may have just been a hallucination, which I learned through research can happen in the moments after just waking up for some people. Sleeping in the house alone the rest of the night was the most anxious thing I'd ever done after that, but I really won't ever know for sure if what I saw was really just a hallucination, or if, God forbid, whoever was running that Miranda Catfish account was in my house. A few months after this incident, that account was either deleted by the user or taken down by Instagram. It no longer exists. It no longer exists. Instagram is my favorite time waster app. I spend a good chunk of my free time browsing it. I've gotten my fair share of creepy DMs. I've learned to ignore them. So when I got a notification from Instagram that some random account requested to DM me, I didn't sweat it. I did, however, just open the DM because I always do out of curiosity. The DM was a link to another Instagram profile named Perfect Always with a Z. I pressed the link and it opened this page with a bunch of pictures of girls, like young girls, seemingly varying in ages from 13 to 20. As I continued to scroll through the account, I picked up on an unsettling fact, that all the pictures seemed to have been taken in secret. Like one girl was on a school bus, one was sitting on a park bench, one was taken from behind a bush of a girl walking on a sidewalk, one was taken of a group of girls at a college campus. Expecting to find perverted comments on the posts, all I found were positive comments like "keep up the good work" and "nice." There were also some comments with random numbers, like 500, and that's it. And every single account that commented appeared to be spam accounts, like no profile pictures and no followers. It was a weird and creepy account, so I reported it and sent a link of it to my friend Allie. Then I went about my business. I was at school when all this happened, so I couldn't give it too much attention to begin with. It wasn't until after school when I got home that Allie finally texted back saying, "OMFG, who did that? That's crazy." I replied, "I know, it's so creepy." She seemed more concerned and shocked than I was expecting her to be. She replied saying, "You need to report that to the police right away." I replied back, "Why me? It's not exactly my problem." She replied back with nothing but question marks mixed with exclamation points. So I said, "Why are you freaking out?" She said, "Why don't you care about someone posting pictures of you on their Instagram?" My heart sank. I immediately rushed to click the link again and view the profile. This time there were 2 new photos uploaded to the page. One of a girl in the passenger seat of an SUV, and one a picture of me walking home. It was taken from inside a car parked on the side of the road. I remembered seeing that car, and I remembered noticing someone sitting in it. This just seemed unreal. I called Allie at once, freaking out. I told her why I didn't understand at first, and explained how some random account DM'd me the link. Allie told me to report it to Instagram and the police. I told her I reported it to Instagram already, and told her to do the same. I stayed locked in my room talking to Allie for at least an hour, as I was home alone. The next time I refreshed that Instagram page, it said, "This page does not exist." First thought, okay, it blocked me, so I asked Allie to refresh it as well, and it said the same thing for her. We both used our Finsta accounts to confirm that it was removed, and it was. The account no longer appeared. I still don't know if it was taken down by Instagram or if the creator of the account deactivated it. I also have no idea what those numbers in the comments meant. Either way, it seemed like one big setup thing, and I'm scared to know any other details about what was going on with that Instagram page. This situation happened in my first year of high school. I was 15 years old and lived pretty far from school, which resulted in me taking public transportation to and from there. My Instagram was set to public back then, and I never really cared much about who followed me, which, in retrospect, being a young teen, I should have. My page was pretty standard. I was visible in most of my posts, posing by myself or with a couple of my friends for the most part. I also post a lot of my story, which for those of you who don't know, allows users to share photos and videos to their story for 24 hours. In those stories, I would sometimes include a shot of me waiting for the bus or at the subway with music playing in the background. I remember posting such one day, and randomly looking at my stories and seeing who viewed them. I had around 120 views, most of them from people I knew. One account in particular stuck out. The profile pic showed an unfamiliar middle-aged man. The selfie was taken at a weird close-up angle, like those cliché parent selfies. He had seen every one of my stories posted. I didn't really think that much of it, and continued about my day. Hours later, when I was nearing sleep at around 2 a.m., I got notifications that that same man had requested to DM me, followed me, and liked all my posts. I had about 12 posts, so it wasn't a crazy amount of notifications. I opened his DM and it just said, "Hey," with a smiley face. I definitely found this crazy weird, so I didn't respond and checked his profile. His username was odd. Sam with a bunch of numbers. He only had one post, the weird angled selfie with 2 likes. I finally got a decent look at his face. He was pale and bald with dark tinted sports glasses. He seemed to be wearing a ripped white t-shirt. He had 5 followers and was following around 400 people, which mostly consisted of teenage girls, young women, and a few celebrities. Realizing what an actual creeper this guy was, I blocked him, plain and simple. In the morning, I got off the subway stop that's next to my school and took a seat on the bench in the middle of the platform to adjust my backpack. Upon doing this, I felt someone watching me. The platform was packed with people, so I thought maybe it was just my anxiety. I rose up and turned to find the now familiar middle-aged creep staring at me. His eyes were a glossy blue color, sunken and droopy. He stood a good 20 feet from me, just gawking with an angered frown. I felt the strong urge to throw up and cry at the same time. My skin prickled and my whole body filled with fear. Everything I was feeling was multiplied by 1,000 as I realized he was slowly walking towards me. No one paid him any attention. No one batted an eye. And I remember breathing hard and heavily, wishing someone would pick up on what was happening. I turned and speed walked around and past people trying to lose him. Though with each step I took back, he took 2 steps forward. He was getting a lot closer to me by the second. It was all happening so fast, and I honest to God didn't know whether to continue to run or attempt to draw attention to him. I ran into a woman with a seemingly friendly face on the stairs, and that's when I decided on the latter. I told her that guy in white is following me. As I spoke, I heard my own voice quiver, and that's when I realized how afraid and panicked I actually was. She noticed the man I was referring to at the bottom of the steps, and right away she called him out. She told him to stop following me or she'd call the police. Her shouts made him freeze as others began to stop and take note of the situation. She stood protectively in front of me, waiting for his next move. I took the opportunity to snap a quick pic of his face that I would later use to report him. In my head, all I thought was, he's not going to do anything with people watching me. He can't be that stupid. And I was right. He turned around and got on the next subway train. The woman walked me to my school, and on the way, I couldn't help but wonder how that man could have possibly found me. And then I remembered. I posted a story of the subway stop I got off. That realization alone made my skin crawl and taught me a very important lesson to never reveal your specific location to your public social media. After the woman walked me to my school, I thanked her and actually gave her a hug. I don't know what I would have done if she hadn't stepped in. I wasn't brave enough to say anything to the man, so frozen in fear. But that woman was, and I'm forever grateful for her. And I hope that if anyone is ever in her position, that they will step in and use their voice to help. And I hope that if anyone is ever in her position, that they will step in and use their voice to help. The internet and social media can be a very dangerous thing. This personal experience of mine is a prime example of what I mean. I've had an Instagram account for like 7 years now. I used to post on it a lot more when I was younger. These days I really don't post at all, and I only open the app like once a day just to browse my friends' posts or whatever. Well, recently I lost my phone. I figured it was time for a new one anyway though. I did try the whole find my iPhone thing, but it said my phone was like 30 miles away. It just wasn't worth it for that old phone. Moving on, one day not too long ago, I got a DM from a kid from high school that I hadn't spoken to in years. In fact, I didn't even follow him. I peeped what he DM'd me, and it was a heads up message. He was bringing it to my attention that someone was using my pictures on a fake Instagram account. He shared the profile in question with me, so I had a look and realized he was right. There was this entire account pretending to be me, just using a different name. There were pictures I'd never even posted on Instagram before on there, pictures exclusive to my old phone. My head was spinning. I actually felt sick over this. I immediately assumed whoever found my old phone somehow bypassed the password. The account had 50 followers and it was following around 150 people. The posts all got like 5 to 10 likes. Most had no comments, but some had basic comments like a flame emoji or whatever. This account was literally pretending to be me. It had a story posted, so I went to check that, and I felt even more sick to my stomach. It was a boomerang panning from my house to my car over and over, as if they were showing off both. A boomerang is basically just a looping 2-second video that goes back and forth from one point to another. This meant whoever was doing this knew where I lived, and had any other information I may have still had on that phone. The story was posted only a few hours ago. I immediately thought to go to find my iPhone settings and turn on lost mode. I regretted not doing that the second I lost that phone now. When I tracked my old phone one last time, I was in for another horrible surprise. It said the location of my old phone was right outside our house somewhere. There's a lot of space between houses in our gated community, so there was no mistaking that person was still out there on the property somewhere. I turned on lost mode on the old phone, then ran downstairs to get my roommate Corey's attention. It seemed he was already occupied though, by his husky barking at something in the backyard. Corey was standing by the door watching his dog. I explained in as few words as possible because I felt the situation was dire. We stepped out into the yard together to call his dog in. He was out in the grass barking rather viciously at someone or something out of sight. The dog was barely visible because it was so dark out. We went together to grab the dog by the collar, and as we got hold of him, we saw someone in the bushes run away into the patch of trees that separated our house from the next house. It was like a jump scare moment in a horror movie. That dark figure I saw run into the trees had to be the stalker pretending to be me on Instagram. I just knew it. We brought the dog inside and locked the door. You may ask, why didn't we let the dog chase down whoever it was? That's because Corey's dog is all bark, no bite. He wouldn't ever harm a fly. At some point in the middle of the night, the dog started barking again downstairs by the front door. This was very unusual behavior, so Corey and I both checked out the windows and then stepped outside. It was the most scared I had ever felt in my life, standing on the front porch, looking out into the dark night, knowing someone was out there probably watching us. We went back inside, and for the rest of the night, silence. I think whoever had my phone turned it off or smashed it after I put it in lost mode to avoid it being tracked any further. I say this because it would no longer update the location. I checked everywhere by the last known location, but it didn't turn up. After DMing that account that I knew who they were and was filing a report to the police, the account disappeared only a few minutes later. I don't think it was deactivated. I think it was completely deleted. My threat seemed to work. Like I said, this was recently though, and I'm still staying very aware of my surroundings.